Good morning or good afternoon to all my little cougar artists out there. Let me start by saying we're going to have to shift gears. We're going to have to switch things up a little bit, do things differently in art class. But as Mr. Bodett would say, you got to be flexible. So the way that we're going to do art class for a while at least is I'm going to be teaching all of my art lessons through video presentations like this one, and you're going to follow along and do your artwork as you watch the video. Now, the good news is that while you're doing the artwork, I'm also going to be in the room with you physically, at least standing in the doorway to make sure that everything goes well. So you're going to have two Mr. G's with you each day that you have art. I'm so happy for you guys. When I think of all the children throughout the world who have no Mr. G's in their life and you have two, how lucky are you? So with that being said, if you're ready, I'm ready. Mr. G, are you ready? Well, then let's get started. So you've created a landscape drawing. I bet you think that makes you pretty amazing, huh? Well, you're right. You are pretty amazing. I've looked at your landscape drawings and they are amazing. If they weren't, we wouldn't be proceeding. You have everything that a landscape needs. You've got a sky in the background, you've got your mountains in your middle ground, and in your foreground, you've got your trees. Background, middle ground, foreground. Everything that a good landscape drawing needs except color. You got to have color. What is a landscape drawing without color? What's a world without color? I love the smell of crayons in the morning. It smells like creativity. And the crayons we're going to use are pastel crayons. I call them juicy crayons, but they're actually oil pastels. Now, the only thing that you have to decide is whether you want to have a blue sky or an orange sky for a sunset picture. But no matter how you color, keep a couple things in mind. One is when you hold the crayon, hold it close to the tip. If you color firmly and you hold it in the middle when you color, well, it's going to break. So hold it close to the tip, hold it pretty much straight up and down instead of coloring like this, and color with short, even coloring strokes. When you color with long lines to fill up space quickly, no matter how many times you go over it, it always looks sloppy. So take your time. You got no place to go. This is art class. Take your time, color neatly. And if you're ready, make your decision. Do you want a blue sky or an orange sky? Once you've decided, we'll begin. So you've decided that you want your landscape Adirondack scene to have a nice, cheerful blue sky. So if you've made that decision, get out your light blue pastel and we'll get started. Now for my blue sky, I'm going to begin right at the top of the paper. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I'm going to color firm at the top and then slowly get lighter as I come down. I press down hard, then medium and light, and I always work across. Firm, medium, and then light. And if you have your pastel in your hand, go ahead and get started. Maybe we'll finish at about the same time. And it's okay if I go over my mountains a little bit because my mountains are going to be even darker than my sky. So I'm going firm, medium, soft, until it disappears. And I'm coloring with little short coloring strokes, and I'm taking my time. And the good news is, if I make a mistake, and I don't color it exactly the way that I want to, like I said, you can see I'm going right over the tree here, and that's okay, because my tree is going to be even darker. Now my picture has got a darker blue sky at the top, and it gets lighter and lighter as I go down towards the bottom of my picture, or at least as it gets closer to my mountains. And I'm going to take just a second to show you what it looks like. And if yours doesn't look exactly like this, that's fine. If your sky is solid blue, well, that's fine also. I'm just about finished with my blue sky. And if you need a little bit more time before we move on to the next color, or the next part of our picture that we're going to color, feel free to pause the video. And then when you're done your blue sky, you can move on to the next part. Because for me, the next part of my picture is going to be my mountains. And I'm actually going to color my mountains blue also, at least to start off. And I'm going to color this time around my trees. And I'm always coloring with short, even coloring strokes. And I don't think it matters that much if you always go in the same direction. I know a lot of people say that when you color, if you want it to look neat, you should always color in the same direction. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but I do think that it's important that you color with short, even coloring strokes. Your coloring strokes shouldn't be any longer than about an inch, because when you color like this, no matter how many times you go over it, it always looks sloppy. So take your time and color neatly. Hopefully, you'll finish your mountains around the same time that I'll finish my mountains, and we can move on to the next color at the same time. And if not, if I finish first and you need a little bit more time, go ahead and pause the video. And if you finish first, well, wait for me. I'm an old man. I don't move as fast as you guys. But now I've colored my blue sky and my blue mountains. And I like blue, but it might be a little bit too much blue. So I'm going to add a little bit of purple to my mountains, just like that song. We're going to have Purple Mountain Majesty in our picture. And I'm going to color again with short coloring lines. And the purple is a little bit of a dominant color. That means if I press down with my purple as hard as I did with my blue is going to kind of disappear. So I'm going to color lightly with my purple. And I'm going over everything in my mountains with purple. Keeping in mind, I'm not going to color very dark because I don't want those blue colors to disappear. But you can see already how not only does it separate the mountain color from the sky color, but now I can see some blue in my mountains and some purple in my mountains, which makes my mountain range a little bit more interesting. It gives it a little bit more pop than it had if I just used one color. This is the way that the artists, called the Impressionists, colored their pictures. If you looked at their blue sky, they didn't color with just blue. They would use blue and purple, maybe a little lavender, a little gray, a little white, a little pink. So it would still look like a blue sky, but if you looked at it closely, you would see a whole bunch of different colors that would make every part of the picture a little bit more interesting to look at. Now my purple mountains are finished. They have some purple and they have some blue. I could even work in a little bit of gray if I wanted to. Not too much, because I don't want it to look dull. I like those nice bright colors. Makes the picture much more cheerful. And after I color with the blue and the purple and the gray, I decide I want it to be a little bit more blue again, I can always come back and put a little bit more blue on top. If I stay inside my mountain area, inside the area below the mountain range at the top, and I keep away from the trees, I can add a lot of different colors, especially if I've colored neatly, so that no one area is too purple or too blue or too gray. Now I like the way the blue and the purple look in my mountains, so I'm going to try doing a little bit of that in my sky. But again, just a little bit, because I still want my sky to look blue. So I'm going to put just a very light purple line right along the top, very light, because I can always make it darker. Now the step that I'm doing right now is optional. Optional means you have a choice. If you don't like the way it looks, then don't do it. But very, very lightly, and only about the top inch or maybe 2 inches, I'm putting just a little bit, just a hint of purple. I still want to have a blue sky, but now I'm putting just a little bit more color along the top. And if I want to blend these colors to make them look a little bit softer, I can take my white pastel and go over everything. So it looks a little bit smoother, and I don't see those coloring strokes, those separation of colors as much. Now I still see my blue, I still see my purple, but they're blended in a little bit more. And this step, like I said, is optional. You're better off having no purple in your sky than too much purple, because you want your sky to look blue, not purple. Just a little hint up here. I'm going to go over this a little bit because it's a little bit more purple than I want, so I'm going to put some blue on top of it. The only thing I have to do now are my trees. So I'm going to take a nice dark green, and I'm going to start with the trunk of my tree. And the fun thing about coloring these trees is that if I stay in the basic triangle shape, I can scribble. I'm going to go up and down and in all different kinds of directions, but I'm always coloring with short coloring strokes. And it's okay if I have a little bit of white space, but not too much. And as you can see, I'm just filling in those triangles with short scribbly lines, nice and firm. As long as you don't break your pastel. Yeah, I know I broke my pastel. I don't need you yelling at me. I guess that means that I can't yell at you if you break a pastel. Which is too bad, because you know how much I love to yell at my students. I'll have to find something else to yell at you about. And I'm almost done. You can see how I'm scribbling. Just got little scribbles right here. And I'm going to keep coloring over it with short scribbles until it's all filled up. The only thing that I want to do at this point is fill in these white spaces with a little bit of color, because I want to make it look like it's not trees that are in front of white paper, but trees that are actually in front of the blue mountain. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to fill in these white spaces with a little bit of blue. I'm going to come back with my blue, and any place that I see a little bit of white, I'm just going to fill it in. And if it makes my trees look a little bit messier, well, that's just fine. I'm almost done here. I'm almost done. I think my dogs see some dogs on television. Yes, guys, I know it's very exciting. Now is not the time. Now I've filled in those white spaces with some blue sky. It looks a little bit more real now. If I want my trees to stand out or pop out even more, I could take a little bit of black. But again, black is the most dominant color. So don't do this unless you're really sure. And if you do it, go very lightly with the black. I can always decide to make my trees darker if I want to, but if I make them too dark, it's hard to reverse that. Start with the tree trunk going down and then a few coloring strokes that go straight up, or at least they angle up. This step with the black pastel to make my trees look a little bit darker is completely optional. But now I have finished my Adirondack landscape scene. Hopefully you've finished yours, and if not, as soon as you're done, I'll check it out because I can't wait to see what you guys have come up with. Well, as we're finishing up our Adirondack scene, I know that some people picked the orange scheme, some people picked the blue scheme, but no matter which coloring scheme that you picked, I hope that you enjoyed watching the video. I hope you enjoyed working on your drawing. I hope you realize that your drawing does not have to look like your neighbor's, and more importantly, it doesn't have to look like mine. As long as you learned a little something and you had fun, you tried your best, then it was worth it. I am looking forward to our next drawing assignment together. I hope you are too. And until then, stay creative, stay safe, stay cougar strong. We'll see you soon.